The present knowledge clip contains some more in-depth knowledge about what a pre-registration is, why you may want to do one, and how to go about it. As will be explained in the knowledge clip on open science, a pre-registration is, in short, the plan that you make for how you will conduct your scientific study, which you register somewhere before starting that study. This plan can be as brief or extensive as you want, and can include just your hypotheses or go as far as to include the scripts that you will eventually use to run your analyses. The pre-registration is published on a platform independent of the journal that you will eventually publish your study in. The goal is to map out clearly what were choices that you made prior to the start of your study and what were choices you made after starting and why they were made. Pre-registering your study can serve multiple functions. Firstly, pre-registering your study can help you make clear to readers and reviewers that your choices were made in advance based on theory, rather than after seeing your data and perhaps as a consequence of questionable research practices, such as for instance hypothesizing after seeing the data. Secondly, a pre-registration can help you think more deeply about all the steps that are part of your scientific study and how to conduct each of them. This will help you save time later, as the choices of what to do and how to do it have already been made. Thirdly, it helps you differentiate choices made before seeing the data from later amendments, both for yourself and for others. As you probably know if you've ever conducted a study, changes to the original plan are often made as a study progresses. Sometimes changes need to be made because the initial plan turns out to be unfeasible, or because new insights have emerged that show it to be suboptimal. Moreover, sometimes additions or amendments are made almost unconsciously, for instance because you had not really specified how a variable would be calculated, and thus had room for wiggling. Doing a pre-registration helps you make explicit these many deviations from the original path, and give a more realistic representation of the process that eventually led to your findings. This is especially important in light of the recent replication crisis and successive movement for open science. In line with this open character, there is not one way to go about pre-registration. In fact, your needs may differ based on your personal preferences, study characteristics, and restrictions on time. As discussed in the knowledge clip on open science, the timing of your pre-registration, in addition to the format, may differ based on your personal needs. So then, how to go about it? First, you need to decide on what you can and want to pre-register. Then, you decide on where to pre-register. When you have figured out the answer to both of these questions, you can set out to actually setting up the pre-registration. When you're ready, you can put your pre-registration online so that it is time-stamped. When this is done, you're ready to start your study. As mentioned before, the choices of what to pre-register are endless. However, most pre-registrations include the research question and hypotheses. Some also register information about the rationale and the data they will be using to answer the research questions. It is also good to include information about the operationalization of your study. How were variables measured and how will you test your hypotheses? At the most detailed level, you can also provide the scripts that you will eventually use to run your analyses. Like what to pre-register, where to pre-register is not a question with just one answer. Again, it may depend on your personal preferences, as well as the type of study you are conducting. For most studies, however, the open science framework can be a good place to start. If you create an OSF account, you can easily keep track of your pre-registrations and the projects they belong to. On OSF, you can create an environment for different projects, including background information, files, and related projects. And of course, you can also make a pre-registration. OSF offers many different formats for pre-registration, but this one at the top covers many of the important things that you may want to think about. As you can see, it covers most steps of the introduction and method. When you're done filling in the information and your co-authors agree with your choices, you can submit the pre-registration and have it time-stamped. You're now ready to start your study. However, before submitting, carefully check that everything you filled in is correct and is the best way to move forward, because, as I mentioned before, the pre-registration itself cannot be altered anymore. You can, of course, make amendments in the paper itself, but the pre-registration will be frozen the way it is when you submit it. Now that I've explained to you the basic process of the pre-registration, let's finish with some questions you may have. You may have heard the term registered report before and wondered if it's the same as a pre-registration. Well, not quite. A pre-registration and a registered report are quite similar, in a sense that they both have been introduced as part of the open science movement and serve to register your research plans before conducting your study. However, they also differ in important ways. Firstly, whereas a pre-registration is often done on an independent platform or repository on the internet, registered reports are submitted to a journal, and like any paper submitted there, can be rejected. In line with this difference, the pre-registration is generally not reviewed by the owner or host of a repository beyond seeing whether all basic information is there. The registered report, however, is treated much the same as a submitted article, with the exception that reviewers can also make suggestions for the research design. In this sense, they can help you make the best of your study. Finally, a pre-registration can be done for just the paper that you're writing, and can thus be conducted even after the data is collected. Most important is that you haven't looked at your data yet, because then you cannot guarantee that your hypotheses are based on theory rather than patterns in the data. For the registered report, most journals generally require you not to have started data collection, so that any weaknesses or limitations in the data collection can still be solved. Well, what about a study protocol then? A study protocol is a bit of a mix between the pre-registration and a registered report, in a sense that it is a scientific piece that you submit to a journal and that is reviewed. Moreover, you submit a study protocol prior to collecting data. However, whereas the registered report is only the first project, the study protocol is the end product. One other important difference with the pre-registration is that the study protocol covers the entire research project, rather than just one specific paper you plan on writing on that project. Another question you may have is, does pre-registering your study mean that you cannot make any adjustments to that plan? The short answer is no. Contrary to what many people think, you can still make changes to your research plan after your pre-registration. In fact, if you feel like in the end your proposed analyses aren't optimal to answer your research questions, or you found some other valid argument for other or additional analyses, it is highly desirable that you do change your plan. Pre-registering your study only means that you make clear to your reader that this was not part of the original plan, and why such a change was made. And in the end, this contributes to a more open and more useful scientific literature, because it doesn't just tell others what did work for you, but it also tells them what didn't work. Hopefully this clip gave you a first insight into the process of doing a pre-registration and why it's useful. If you have any questions, of course, always feel free to ask in the lectures or email me.